Domingo German threw the 24th perfect game in MLB history. It snapped an 11-year drought, but it was the most problematic and controversial perfect game ever. First, we need to find out why perfect games are so special and why this one stung so much more. Take a look at the history of perfect games. The first two came in 1880, but that's so long ago, and they both pitched for teams that don't even exist anymore, so we're gonna kind of pretend these ones don't exist. Two that came in the 1900s by, this unrecognizable name. He threw it at age 37, pretty good, Oh, and they named some award after him too, I guess. Yeah, and this other guy threw it in 74 pitches. That's pretty much it. 14 years later, Charlie Robertson of the Chicago White Sox threw one, which was the last one until 1956. 34 years later, Don Larson uncorked the only perfect game to come in the playoffs, and it was in the World Series against the Dodgers. Then three more came in the 1960s, an era that included the year of the pitcher, the lowering of the mound, and a push to add the DH because the league-wide offense was just so bad. During this time, Sandy Koufax may have thrown the most impressive perfect game ever, 14 strikeouts on 113 pitches, and the game was just an hour and 43 minutes long. Up to this point, there had just been 9 perfect games. In the 31 years that followed, there were 14. During this time, there was never more than a 5-year gap between perfect games. It started with Len Baker in 1981, and there were a pair of other perfect games in the 1980s, 4 coming in the 1990s, including a pair of Yankees, and 2 in the 2000s, one by the famed speedrunner Mark Burley, and one by the 40-year-old Randy Johnson, the oldest pitcher ever to throw a perfect game. There was a clear uptick at this time, and the question is starting to be asked, are perfect games losing their luster? They're not so cool anymore now that they just keep happening. Well, like everything in life, it all evens out eventually, so that's why in 2010, Roy Halladay and Dallas Braden threw perfect games just 20 days apart. But that wasn't it for 2010. There was also another one in June of that year. Armando Galarraga became the first Venezuelan-born... No. Jim Joyce! No! In all honesty, Jim Joyce had a heartfelt apology about this.
This is a history call, and I kicked the shit out of it. And there's nobody that feels worse than I do. And I took a perfect game away from that kid over there that worked his ass off all night.
It's on MLB to fix this. It's their problem. They have instant replay. They can change any play they want for whatever reason they want. They need to get on it. They need to change it. Well, I guess 3 in 1 year is kind of a lot, and it just really wasn't meant to be. We'll probably never... Philip Umber, Matt Cain, Felix Hernandez, all threw perfect games in the year of the perfect game in 2012. Cain actually tied Koufax's record of 14 strikeouts in one, and it was an insane run where in a 3-year span, 5 perfect games were thrown, and I posit there should be 6. And then, when the world needed them most, they vanished. 11 straight seasons went by without a perfect game, the longest stretch since Don Larson's back in the 50s. Would it ever happen again? Enter Domingo German. He signed in 2009 with the Marlins and debuted in 2017 with the Yankees. After a cup of coffee and a rough 2018, German showed quite a bit of improvement in 2019. After that season, he attended a charity gala held by CC Sabathia, and things got dark. He was intoxicated and belligerent, and he was bluntly guilty of DA, suspended for 81 games by Major League Baseball. He ended up missing all of the 2020 season and the beginning of the 2021 as well. Flash forward to this year, and he's never been quite as good as he was back in 2019. Playing for an underperforming Yankees team, it just really hasn't been the same for him. Back in May, German was caught multiple times using sticky stuff and was ultimately suspended 10 games. And it's just a bad look for the guy. On June 27th, his uncle unfortunately passed away, and he took it really hard, saying that he cried in the clubhouse a lot and that his uncle really brought a lot of joy to his family. 2 days after the passing of his uncle, he took the mound in the Coliseum against the Oakland A's, the most problematic team in baseball. If you've ever seen Moneyball, you know the A's are cheap. I think Brad Pitt sums it up pretty well here.
Is that there are rich teams and there are poor teams. Then there's 50 feet of crap. And then there's us.
The A's are the owners of the worst record in baseball, but they weren't always this way. Back in 2020, they won the division, and then in 2021, they were 10 games over 500, but just missed out on the playoffs. For whatever reason, that offseason, they decided to blow the whole thing up. They let Andrew Chafin, Starling Marte, Josh Harrison, Mark Canha, and Yan Gomes all walk in free agency, and they traded Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, and Sean Manaea as well, just completely giving up. And in 2022, it was more of the same, trading Frankie Montas and Sean Murphy. Earlier this year, word broke that A's ownership bought land in Las Vegas to ultimately move the team there and build a stadium. However, the worst part of this was they cited low fan attendance as the problem, which is a little unfair considering they're intentionally putting the worst product they possibly can on the field. In a crumbling, flooding, rat-infested stadium, A's fans held a reverse boycott where a lot of fans showed up and made it a playoff-type atmosphere, even though the team was never going to make the playoffs, to show that they aren't the problem.
That is a fair ball. It's in the corner. Peterson to third. He's going to be waved home, and he will score. That's off the glove, and the A's will take the lead. Swing and a miss. He got him.
So yeah, there's a lot of drama going on with the A's right now.
I'm problematic.
On June 29th, history was made.
Grounded to third. Donaldson has it. There it is. Perfection for Domingo German.
Domingo German became the first Dominican-born player to throw a perfect game in Major League Baseball history. He dedicated the game to his uncle, and you can even see him point to the sky after the final out was recorded. Another cool little thing was he called his teammates over to get a whole team picture, which is something you don't see every day. Maybe he was a changed man. However, news broke in August that German showed up to the clubhouse intoxicated and angry again, flipping couches and screaming at players and coaches, a lot of the same issues he dealt with back in 2019. He was placed on the restricted list and ultimately submitted to inpatient care. The perfect game is a sacred and special occasion. Just look at Felix Hernandez's perfect game. The whole baseball world remembers it so fondly, not just Mariners fans. German's perfect game broke an 11-year drought, but it was riddled with issues. It came against a team actively trying to lose with the worst roster in baseball, and it came from a former DA offender on the mound who had been caught cheating earlier that year. But there were special moments as well. German's connection with his uncle, being the first Dominican-born player to ever do it, and wanting it to be a team experience instead of taking all the glory. The 24th perfect game was far from perfectly scripted. It was problematic and controversial. More than anything, instead of being a beacon of hope and wonderment, it was a cry for help. A broken man locking in to honor his uncle before spiraling out of control, and a team struggling so much, history was made against them to show the world how bad things had gotten. In that way, it was perfect. A perfect place and a perfect time. It showed that there still might be good in Domingo German, and it was a flashing neon sign telling the world that the A's and their fans need help. Can only hope that both change for the better.